Welcome to another episode of the Orange Nerd Show. In this video, we're going to talk the finale for Book of Boba Fett. We have a lot of thoughts on this one. We're also going to talk about that Walt Disney Company quarterly earnings that dropped yesterday. It's going to be a stacked show. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Orange Nerd Show where we talk about everything except the theme park. So we're talking the movies, streaming, even some corporate stuff. We're going to get into the corporate stuff a little bit later. But first, I want to introduce my panel, as I always do, right here. Mr. Vast Guy, Dre, host of Freshly Squeezed. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very, very well. I'm very excited about today's topics. Again, the season premiere of one of Disney's biggest shows to date just dropped, and it's a very interesting time in the Disney company as a whole. So I'm really excited to get into it. You can find me at Vash Sky. It's right down there. And if you want to see me, I'm on Orange Go 55, the channel you're watching at Freshly Squeezed, your source for Disney news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. So that's where you can find me.
Yes. Perfect. Well, thank you, Dre. And down below, we have a very special guest rejoining us again to talk some Book of Boba. Josh, how you doing today, buddy?
Hello, I'm doing good.
It's good to have you back. And for those of you at home that are not aware, Josh is Mr. Family Man's son. And he joined us the last time when we talked a little Boba Fett a few weeks ago. So how you guys doing? Hey, George, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, as you know, that's my job. I'm the Disney family man. So whenever I can incorporate my family along with these conversations and everything, it's always good. And then he's a huge Star Wars fan. So, you know, he loves to talk Star Wars. And there's times where as I said, we're even watching something and he's going in depth of like with Rebels and Clone Wars. And it's like, nice. Okay, like knowledge overload.
Yeah, because I know more than you. You don't watch the shows.
Let's start with Josh then. Josh, you saw the finale of Book of Boba. What did you think?
I thought it was very, very good. I liked the action-packed scenes with the fighting and stuff, all the robots and stuff, and the new technology with they finally fixed the problem of non-walk through shields.
Now those are the
big
force fields,
the big droids.
Yeah. Now were those and Josh, you're good at this. Were those in the prequels? Those machines?
No, there was a type of them. They were called destroyers, but They weren't that big. And they also had walk-through shields.
Gotcha. That's why they looked familiar. They're reminiscent of those, but you're right. I think they were smaller. They looked a little different. But overall, you enjoyed the finale. You thought it was pretty good?
I did.
Cool. What about you, Mr. Family Man? What did you think about the finale?
I think it ended the way that I think it should have. However, I mean, I do have kind of mixed feelings on it. I'm not saying that it was horrible. But I do feel at times where it kind of felt like it kind of segued into the Mandalorian, you know, like where it's like it started out as Boba Fett and then it kind of turned into, you know, bringing on Mando and Grogu, which was fine, but it kind of felt like a little bit it stole the show for the very end for Boba. And not saying that's a bad thing, but I think honestly they could have ended Boba Fett in a different manner and maybe continued it where he had a cameo in the beginning of The Mandalorian season 3.
Yes. George, you hit the nail on the head with episodes 5 and 6. They were so epic that it was big shoes to fill by the time they got to the finale. And the finale I thought was good. It wasn't great. And normally that would be okay, but when you're following up episode 6, especially, I don't know. It was a little disappointing for me. But Vash, what are your overall thoughts on that finale? Oh, I think you're on mute, sir.
Sorry about that. I do apologize. This is why everybody's here is to improve me as a streamer, right? So I think this image right here encapsulates everything that that I'm kind of feeling about 7, right? So I think the ideas were actually very, very, very good.
Right.
The inclusion of the Rancor and these huge droids, the town coming back, and just an overall just kind of like wrapping up the series, tying all loose ends. I thought that was actually pretty good. What I kind of have problems with is really the execution, right? The execution is, oh, you can see that image right there. It's not the greatest that it probably could have been, right? And
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of that kind of falls on Robert Rodriguez's shoulders, I think. I think there were some really good concepts here, and if it was just a little bit, his episodes were some of the weakest of the series, unfortunately. He had direct, I believe, episode 3 and another one as well that, everybody kind of, they maybe necessarily weren't as strong as they could be. And it's interesting, we get to see, these guys in action again, and it's kind of funny because you only see these guys really when Robert Rodriguez is behind the helm, right?
Right.
It's like, yeah, I don't think this played well even internally, which is why people kind of avoided these characters. But Chrysanthemum, great. There were some great ideas. The town kind of, being this kind of landscape for this battle, I think was a pretty good choice. It's just, we can get into it a little bit further, but the execution was just a little bit off.
But I also have to say too, with some of these characters, I don't know what it is. Like every time I see them riding up on their bikes, it just like reminds me of the Power Rangers. Like one had a blue vehicle, the other had a red vehicle, the other had a pink vehicle. It's like, I don't know. To me, that it didn't scream Star Wars like in that sense. Now, I mean, I did enjoy like the end epic battle. I think that was kind of, decent. But again, it seemed like it kind of fell on Grogu, where it was like he was the hero after the end of the whole thing, which is fine. Yeah. But I don't know. I just feel like that could have been a better setup for, well, I guess it was a setup for Mando 3, but I think that could have started into season 3 rather than wrapping it up with Boba Fett.
And Dre, you brought up a great point about execution. And I think that's the key word here, I think, with a lot of this, because I'll take as George calls them, the Power Rangers, right? I think the idea behind the Power Rangers, like the vehicles, was kind of paying homage to American Graffiti, which was a George Lucas film, right?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah, so it's paying homage to that film. Heart was in the right place. Cool idea. I thought that was really neat. I did. I think that idea is really neat. It was the execution, though, and the placement of where these characters were. Like, if you would have put these same characters on Coruscant, it would have been chef's kiss. It would have been so perfect. They would have fit in beautifully.
Yeah.
It just feels really off on Tatooine.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Everything, like the brown and beige and colors real dirty. And then you see these brightly colored. It just doesn't work. It just looks really weird, in my opinion.
Correct. And like you touched on, OG, it's just the aesthetic of Tatooine. Like everybody's dirty. Like the town of, Freetown is dirty, right? The Mos Espa, Mos Eisley. Every single time we see this place, which we are extremely familiar with by now, and don't worry, we will get more familiar with one show later with Obi-Wan. So, like, we come in with a certain expectation, right? And when you see these characters in this setting, it's like it just doesn't jive, and it makes their inclusion even all that more awkward. I actually like the mod thing. I like how Star Wars is kind of tackling that, because we've kind of heard about it, read about it, we've seen it in other fictional material, but we haven't never seen that in Star Wars, and it's very, very appropriate for this universe. But when you see the clean, shiny, spanking new bikes, it's like, where do you even get the water to do that? Like, it's laughable, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of those kind of things. But I think a lot of other things were pretty good in this series, right? I do like Fennec Shan and Boba Fett and their kind of differing styles and approaches, right? I like how, people complain that Boba Fett was a crime lord, didn't commit crimes. I remember reading that on Twitter. I think you said it, don't you?
Yeah.
And I do agree with that sentiment. It's now like, what, a security force? Like, what are we doing here? It's a little awkward. It's a little weird. But I do actually like him inhabiting, Jabba's old palace and stuff like that. Him kind of negotiating through this world here. There's some really good ideas and concepts. But like I said, the execution's a little bit weird. Like you said, George, Mando gets introduced in episodes 5 and 6, right?
Right.
Very heavily. Boba Fett, I don't even think he has a line between those two episodes. He's only featured one time between the two of them, and now it's back to Boba in 7. That's a very awkward thing. They should have kind of spread that out throughout the series so it wouldn't be so incredibly awkward where it's backloaded like that, and especially right before the finale, giving people maybe false impressions of what that finale might be. I have heard that there's some rumors out there that indicate that maybe this was going to be a movie instead of a series, and it was placed as a series, obviously to uplift Disney Plus. And because of that, they kind of stretched it out, and it kind of feels maybe a little bit rushed, maybe a little bit forced, and it kind of holds it back.
I was just going to say that because right at the very end, and I'm going to kind of date myself with this, but it kind of felt like watching Dawson's Creek. Like, it's like where you watch the whole entire series and it had a nice flow to it, and then like at the last season it felt rushed because the series got canceled and they had to jam pack everything into like the final episode, and it's like, what the hell? It's
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing too, and this might have been an issue, and I don't know if it's an issue or not. I'm just kind of trying to figure this out, because it's the same team who did Mandalorian, and Mandalorian kicked all kinds of butt, right? It was fantastic. And then you fast forward to Book of Boba Fett, and it's lower in quality. The production, the editing, it's just not there. It, like you guys were saying, feels rushed. Now, I kind of had a little bit of the same issue when it came to Hawkeye. I really enjoyed Hawkeye, but it also felt lesser tier than like a WandaVision, Dre, do you feel, because I believe Hawkeye and Boba were filmed during the Pandy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that played a part in Boba and Hawkeye too, kind of just coming off kind of rushed, lesser quality? Is that a possibility that's what's factoring in here? Because they were both, from what I understand, filmed around the same time.
I believe that's a possibility, right? That COVID did have an effect on it, right? That the Pandy did have an effect on the production slate and the timings and when these things were going to be produced. But this actually juxtaposes really nice into our next topic. And well, they might have been wanting to get this out in order for it to be right in the 2022 Q1 report, right? Set these series as debuting at this time in order to get that subscriber count up to its highest level before the quarterly report comes out. I think that might have had something to do with it too. But I do agree with you. There were a lot of factors at play, I think, with both these series, as you astutely point out.
Yeah.
And I think sorry.
Oh no, I was actually. Well, go ahead and finish your point, and then we'll go to Josh. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, I think they kind of rested their laurels on adding Mando and Grogu in this, where it's like they have that mindset of saying, well, no matter how bad the story of Boba Fett is, as long as we throw in Grogu and Mando in there, it'll kind of be a band-aid on the series, so to speak, that no matter how people feel about it with mixed reviews or what have you, the second they see Grogu, it's like the series is saved. And I think they have to be careful with that, because when they rest on their laurels of throwing Grogu in everything, then sometimes too much can be a not so good thing.
Well, yeah, and also a big issue I think is a kind of they like Disney created Mandalorian, right? This like Boba Fett type of character, and they hit such a home run with Mandalorian that when the Boba Fett show came around, it was almost like, how do we match that? Like they almost did too good of a job with Mando, because now it's like, oh, now what do we do with Boba? Like it was like, how do you compete with this like worldwide phenomenon that's Mando and Grogu? It would like really set Boba up. I mean, not making excuses, but I mean, I do think that's a big factor, because I do feel like it's a hard act to follow for sure.
Right.
And they're kind of similar characters.
Well, and yeah, and they're similar origins. Well, maybe not. Okay, their stories are different, right? But they're kind of they are Mandalorians. They share very similar type armor. You could run into the issue, right, of Boba repeating a lot of Mando and not really setting itself apart. Right. So I think that's why they went the crime lord angle. I think that's why they went with a completely radical take on the character, him approaching a new stage in his life. Then, hey, we're just going to have a badass bounty hunter again, right? And
right.
Some people complain about that. Some people are like, I want to see bounty hunter Boba Fett in his prime. And it's like, that's not, I mean, you can't, even if you did go that route, the GP is probably going to be like, so is this like Mando season 3 with a new armor set? Like, that's what it would come off as.
Exactly. Now, Josh, I want to ask you, for this episode, for this finale, what was your favorite part? What was your favorite aspect of this episode?
My honestly favorite part of the finale is because I'm a fan of like Star Wars Rebels and stuff. I was a big fan of when Grogu just kind of steps up to the Rancor and pulls an Ezra Bridger and tries to connect with it.
Nice.
This part right
nice.
Here.
Well, and that Rancor, and we're showing it right here on the screen right now, that Rancor looked beautiful.
Oh my goodness gracious. Really, really nice.
This is how I think George Lucas envisioned how it was supposed to look, but back in the day they didn't have the technology to do so they had to use a lot of like Jim Henson style puppetry, but I feel like this is how he really wanted it to look.
And I think they still use the puppet like for key shots, close-ups especially and stuff like that, but intermixed it, not unlike a Jurassic Park, with CGI shots, and it really comes off seamless. Well executed on this for sure.
Yeah. Overall, it was a fun episode. It just, I don't know. There was a lot of things working against it. Like we talked about, episodes 5 and 6 really set this thing up for failure, because how do you top that Luke Skywalker technology and the how he was like, training Grogu? It's a tough act to follow.
Yeah. And arguably, those characters that are featured were more invested in their stories than Boba. I mean, that's a tough thing.
And then, of course, the one character, and I keep on forgetting his name, shows how much I really care. That one silly goofball.
Twi'lek.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah, see. That he just strikes me as, the more that the story went on, his character strikes me of how I feel that the characters are going to be on the Star Cruiser, because he just seems like so out of place.
Really
are you talking about the guy? My apologies.
Yes.
My favorite character.
Yeah. Like all of this is Galaxy's Edge. All of this is Galaxy's Edge, and then you have him, who is the Galactic Star Cruiser. That's totally. Just how
you nailed it, George. You nailed it.
But so what I actually found funny is that Rancor, when it first appeared, and for a little bit after that, I didn't trust it. Because it was a present from the Hutts, and we all know the Hutts, they aren't very trustworthy.
Some people speculated this. Some people speculated, oh, it's going to turn, and you can kind of see like Danny Trejo, like he's again sloppy direction, but you can kind of see he's like got something hiding behind that, but then we never see that come to fruition, and it's like, well, that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I was expecting the Rancor to like turn on Boba Fett and try to eat him.
Try to eat Mando, so there you go.
Yeah, he did Mando.
Yep. At least he tried to eat one Mandalorian.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, it was okay. It was okay. I'm gonna go before we close it out. I'm gonna ask all of you, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the show overall, from 1 to 10? 1 being terrible, 10 being amazing. I'll start with you, Josh. 1 to 10, 10 being the best. How would you rate the Book of Boba Fett, the entire show?
8.5.
Okay.
Something around there. I thought this show was really good. There were a couple of minor factors that held it back. The Twi'lek.
My apologies.
The cyberpunk kids,
I don't
right?
think I remember as she loads her gun. Maybe. I think he's over there.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Family Man, what would you rate it, 1 to 10, sir?
I'd say normally I would say 6, but episode 5 and 6 together kind of boosted it up a bit. So I'd say maybe about a 7.
Okay.
Had it not been for episode 6, it would have been 6.
Okay. And Vash, what's your ranking of the entire show?
Yeah, so this is tricky because did it have some lows? Yeah, it did. I mean, you could probably, maybe some 4 to 5 kind of elements, right? But it did have some highs, like stuff that was like 9 and 10. So it's like, right. Well, that's, so I'll put it at a, in Josh's opinion, 8.5, right? I will put it straight in the middle at 7.5, 7.5, and I think that's pretty solid. I think Mando is higher on that scale for me. Like 8.5, maybe even a 9 for the two Mando seasons that we've had. But I think it's 7.5. I think it's just right in there. Again, the execution really holds it back, and you could see that chatter on Twitter and some of the forums where it's like this show is all over the place. Like it really did need kind of a. I think they had maybe like a lot of ideas, scaled them back, kind of forced them in, didn't want to let go of anything, and I think the show hurt because of it. If it was more focused, if it was more polished, maybe with a little bit more editing, maybe a little bit more time to flesh out these ideas, maybe even an extra episode and do to kind of, give this series maybe additional weight and some distinct focus, right? I think this really could have come up there, but I'll go 7.5.
Okay, yeah, I'm right in line with you fellas. I'm gonna go 7.5 as well. 7.5. Yeah. The highs were like through the roof, hot, like home runs like crazy. Like this guy right here, Cad Bane and Luke Skywalker and the Mando stuff, and Grogu taking a nap after he calms down the Rancor.
Yeah,
great
that's good.
Stuff. Really, really great stuff. But then there were a lot of lows, like the Power Rangers and just a bunch of stuff. But 7.5 is fair, definitely. So that's a decent score. It's a decent score. Not the best thing ever, but certainly not the worst. So, but yeah, interesting. Well, Kenobi. May 25, baby. Kenobi. We'll be back for that.
They picked the best time to announce that opening.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
They did it for a reason.
So, a few things I just wanted to mention real quick.
Sure. Go ahead, John.
Are that I found it really funny that when I forgot the mechanic's name, but when she finds Grogu in the X-wing, and R2D2 tells her that his name is actually Grogu, and he goes, "Grogu? That's a horrible name." And I'm just sitting there like, the thoughts of every fan that heard the name Grogu.
Yeah, that definitely seemed like a response.
And also just like the surprising thing that I did not expect from Boba Fett is I did not expect to see Cad Bane, because
Yeah.
because I've watched every single season of Clone Wars, and Cad Bane was in a lot of those seasons.
Absolutely.
And after Clone Wars, I'm just like, well, did he die? What happened to him? And then he finally just appears in Book of Boba Fett. I'm just like, wait, where did he come from?
Yeah, that's a good point. They probably should have taken this character and made him the main antagonist, kind of strewn throughout, because in the very next episode that he's introduced as a live action character, he's killed. So maybe stretch that out, maybe make him the main antagonist, or at least like the Darth Vader of the Emperor, right? Of the Pikes, right? The enforcer that he just keeps popping up and just keeps, laying waste to plans, kind of thing. I think that would have been more appropriate.
That probably would have been cool. But the thing about Cad Bane that I just must say in this show is that as good as a bounty hunter as Cad Bane is, he has wires and laser blasters on his wrists and stuff like that. As good as a bounty hunter as he is way too outclassed by a Mandalorian.
Yeah.
They have Beskar armor, which is hard to even cut with a lightsaber.
It's a fair point. Maybe that's why
I don't think a blaster is going to be very effective.
Yeah. Well, Josh, I want to thank you so much for coming on today, buddy. It was good having you on, talking some Star Wars. Any final thoughts before we go?
Not really. I thought.
Did you get all your thoughts out?
Yeah, I got one more.
You got all right? Okay.
Cool. Well, we'll have you back on, Josh. We're going to talk a lot of Kenobi come May.
Oh, so trust me, I'll be ready.
You'll be ready.
And we'll probably be picking your brain to figure this all out. So,
I'll know a lot more than this one.
Well, Josh, you know your stuff, man. You know your stuff. You're always welcome on the channel to talk some Star Wars, or it was a good time. Thank you so much for coming on, Josh.
You're welcome. I know a lot more because this one only watches movies. And he calls himself a Disney fan.
Right.
In some cases, I'm more of a Disney fan than you are.
Man, that's harsh words, Josh. Harsh words. Well,
I know
we're gonna
how to put my dad in his place.
Man, your son's roasting you. Your son's roasting you to I don't know how many people. Oh my goodness gracious. Well, we will see how much a Disney fan George is with this quarterly earnings report, because you got to be hardcore to get into this, and I think it's an appropriate transition.
All right. Well, so our next topic is going to be the Walt Disney Company's quarterly earnings that dropped yesterday. This is a doozy. So Hollywood Reporter is saying here, Disney crushes Wall Street expectations. Disney Plus soars to nearly 130 million subs. Disney Plus added 11.8 million subs last quarter to hit 129.8 million total. Hulu nabbed 6.6 to reach 45 million. Real quick, I just want to say here that just read this paragraph real quick. The Walt Disney Company beat Wall Street expectations in its latest quarterly earnings report. The company reported revenue of $21.8 billion and net income of $1.1, with earnings per share $1.06. So I'll start with Dre. Dre, what are your thoughts overall in regards to this earnings report? Oh,
you're mute again. You're mute.
See, I'm glad you guys pointed that out. I do apologize, guys. I'm so frazzled by the day. We only had I had a very short time to prepare today, and my mind's just going nuts, going crazy. So I really do apologize about that. But this is some really, really interesting stuff, right? And it's interesting on multiple levels. The rumor was to the investment world that this quarterly earnings report is going to be really, really good, really, really good, really, really good. And we saw some predictions out there, but this did actually blow away even even the kind of larger expectations that Wall Street had for this. So I believe they were saying that they might hit $22 billion worth of revenue, or maybe like $21 billion worth of revenue, and they actually hit $22 billion worth of revenue, which is just massive. Also, too, they really they really exceeded expectations when it came to their subscriber numbers. I believe they were estimating about 8 million in new subscribers, and they actually hit 11 million new subscribers, which is massive. And obviously that's going to be due in part to Book of Boba Fett and Hawkeye actually coming out in that quarter. And it's I mean, you know, job well done for sure. I will say though, some of this is a little, and as we alluded to in our Book of Boba Fett segment, some of this is a little bit by design, right? Obviously, these shows were selected to premiere in that date. Maybe these shows could have actually been stronger had they been given more time, but c'est la vie, this is where we're at. And we look at this earnings report and we see 100% increase in Parks and Resorts revenue from, I believe, maybe like 3.5 billion to, I believe, over 7 billion, if I'm not mistaken. 7.2 billion, right?
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, okay, that's good, but obviously, an entire domestic park, resort was closed, right? And that impacts that earnings statement a lot. Also, too, we had a lot of the 50th anniversary items kind of placed on hold until October 1st, which happens to be when this quarter actually starts. So we get Harmonious, we get Ratatouille, we get things that were ready for a long time before that actually debut at this time. So we also got the premiere of Genie Plus at around this time as well. So it's all these things that that maybe make this look to be as good as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the 11 million subs for Disney Plus really surprised me because, you know, Disney had a pretty lackluster showing for Disney Plus last quarter with only 2 million, which is pretty much, I mean, that's not even like barely an increase. It's pretty flat. And then to go from that to 11 million, I tell you, I mean, it's the power of Marvel and Star Wars. I mean, that's right there, you know, between Hawkeye and Boba. It's absolutely wild, absolutely wild. George, your thoughts on just overall thoughts on this earnings report?
Well, at first I have to actually say to the naysayers that say, you know, people aren't going to Disney because it's too expensive or what have you, that this just goes to show you that really, honestly, no matter the price tag, people are still going. You know, the parks right now are at a pretty high, you know, capacity as far as like for the wait times and what have you. But just for the overall, I mean, I'm actually impressed with the numbers. I think this is a good start to the road moving forward, especially coming out of, you know, the mess that, you know, the whole world has been going through for the past 2 years, you know, with the pandy and the shutdown and everything, and getting, you know, revenue back up. So I think that, you know, they're not obviously 100% there yet, but this is definitely a step moving forward in the positive way that I think as time goes on, especially when, as far as like with the parks go, with Cosmic Rewind and Tron and Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway opening in Toontown, I think like it'll just keep progressing. And then with Disney Plus, with the Obi-Wan series and more, you know, coming out with Marvel and what have you. And I think that this will projectile into of what Bob Chapek was saying for the next 100 years. And I think it would even skyrocket even more that, again, if Bob Chapek uses the expo to his advantage to be able to kind of showcase everything that's supposed to come out with Disneyland Forward and the future of, you know, the other parks and with Disney Plus, I really think that they can come out of the stagnant of this.
Right. Well, and you mentioned a good point, George, in terms of like it being expensive, but people are still flocking to it. And that's a good point because I feel like, and I've been saying this for a long time, it's a vote with your wallet thing, and a lot of fans don't do that. A lot of fans, they complain on social media. It's this, that, and the other, but they still end up going. Disney will continue to charge high prices and raise prices as long as people are willing to pay them. If I have a lemonade stand, right, and I'm charging $7 a glass for lemonade, and I have a line around the block, people lined up to get my lemonade for $7 a glass, I have zero incentive to lower the price. Zero incentive. And Disney's in the same boat. And until those numbers start to drop off and people stop coming, the prices will remain. That's just the way it is. And then,
well, I have to say, OG, that if you're selling lemonade for $7 a cup, I want that recipe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean that's really the case. I think that it's a tough call. But Dre, what are your overall feelings on like just the park stuff in particular? I mean, any thoughts on? I know the Genie Plus. I did a video on Genie Plus earlier, things like that. Any musings in regards to just the park?
A couple thoughts on this, but I want to clarify for people that we do come at this from a very kind of parks oriented perspective, right? And that there are many facets to the Disney company. What us as park fans might complain about and might, kind of look at the company through that window or that filter or perspective is maybe not representative of the entire picture at the Disney company. I see a lot of people, they blame Chapek for this, they that. You look into the profiles, they are very much parks people, whereas other areas of the company are actually doing, a lot better as that prioritization shifts in those directions. And so I kind of want to, make that distinctly clear for people because, some people, they get like, well, really, is Chapek doing that bad? He's doing this, this, and this, and this. It's like, oh, yeah, because we're talking about it from a parks perspective. But again, the parks are the moneymaker. They are the driver right now in terms of revenue. They might not be the driver in terms of the stock price, obviously. I think we can clearly say that that's Disney Plus and the subscriber number that is really, really, you have Wall Street and investors and shareholders really hinging their bets on. But when it comes to parks, they are very important. So I just want to kind of get that out of the way. When it comes to demand at the parks, I will have to disagree with you fellas a little bit, simply because I think this demand, I don't think it's representative of the great product that Disney's maybe offering. I think a lot of it has to do with, hey, people weren't able to maybe spend their, kind of Christmas season at the parks back in 2020, right? 2021 afforded a very different, distinct opportunity for a lot of people to spend their vacations, whether it be at Disneyland or Walt Disney World. And so when we see this kind of increased demand, it's kind of artificial in my view, just based on kind of market conditions and market forces. And unfortunately, the practices that I'm seeing right now aren't necessarily sustainable for the long haul. I mean, my feeling is this. I liken this to, racing at the Indy 500, right? You're on lap 350, you haven't gone for a single pit stop, and you're feeling great about yourself, right? But at the same time, while you might have a substantial lead, you're doing things that, it's a short-term gain, long-term loss kind of thing. And I don't even know if they're going to finish the race, much less win it, if this kind of keeps going forward in this direction. I look at this and I go, you capitalized on increased demand. You capitalized on the fact that this kind of pandy happened. You did all this stuff. Can you do it again? Can you do it again? Can you do it again? And I don't think you can at this level. Now, I am encouraged that we're seeing like the trams come back, interesting timing on that announcement. We're seeing, World of Color kind of get ready. We're seeing Phantasmic kind of get ready. Like those things are encouraging, but I mean, let's just be honest. The parks they've never cost this much and have offered so little in exchange, in return. And I just worry that they might be encouraged by these numbers to continue that. We saw the 50% number for Genie Plus, and it's like, oh yeah, this is great, this is awesome. My feeling is 50% of people are opting into a service that's supposed to skip the line. That's not great for anybody, including the people who paid for it, including the people who are on the outside looking in, and even the operators themselves. I mean, think about it. These rides have a set capacity. And when you have 50% opting in, and by the way, that's like the average. They were saying that maybe it dipped down to as low as a third throughout the quarter, or maybe it was even higher than 50%. When you're getting these kind of numbers, I mean, it stops becoming a service for people if so many people opt in. And they've done things to encourage this use and make it almost a mandatory for anybody going to Walt Disney World. And I just look at it and I go, this is just not sustainable. I was hearing reports of cast members when they were at these high levels or high adoption rates for Genie Plus. And, usually with Fast Pass, it was about 80-20, right? 80 guests until the next 20 guests for Fast Pass and so on. They were doing like 99-1 at some points. 100 guests before one standby guest is let through. 99 Lightning Lane guests before one standby guest is let through. That's insane. That's crazy. And yes, it is encouraging. Yes, we do want to see the company do well. I want to see the company do well, but I also want to see them do well the right way as well.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's absolutely fair.
Let me ask you this, Dre. Now, because you actually touched upon a point that made me kind of think about it a little bit. Of what is going on right now, primarily in California, where they are going to be starting the removal of the mask mandate for indoors. Now, not knowing exactly what's going to happen as far as like Disneyland's decision upon February 16th, it'll be solely up to them.
Right.
Could that then boost a higher projectile of people going, not necessarily because of the popularity of Disneyland, but because it becomes a psychological thing of people saying, oh, this whole entire time we've had a mask mandate. We have to wear a mask on rides in the shops and what have you. So when you go and remove that and people say, oh, we could then go back to our norm, could that benefit into the factor of having a higher positivity rate to just that alone?
Oh, yeah. They will get increased demand when that mask restriction is removed. I very much do believe that. I actually heard these things to the effect. OG, you pointed out a great point that we can get lost in our groupthink, right? That when we talk to park guys so much or other Disney fans, that we kind of get encased in this bubble. And that's why I always try to attempt to kind of reach out to people who have no association with his Twitter or anybody else like that. I just want a general audience's thoughts on all of this stuff. And I had that unique opportunity at the resort I was staying at this past winter season, as some of you have seen, right? At that resort, I was able to encounter a lot of people who were very well-to-do, business owners, restaurateurs, entrepreneurs, people who had maybe upper class or middle, upper middle class incomes and stuff like that. And I was able to kind of get a sense of what would be Disney's Prime demo, right? I mean, they want every single one of these people to be booking reservations for the parks, right? And quite a few of them, I asked about, kind of masks and how they felt about them. And they were kind of apprehensive about the prospect of actually going to Disney simply based on that. Now, there were other issues that they had issues with, but that was definitely a high, a reason in their list of reasons as to why they were not going at that time.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, I think they'll get a boost from that. Absolutely, they'll get a boost from that. Dre, you mentioned an interesting point about sustainability. Kind of like this idea of like what you were talking about. Short-term gain. Short-term gain, but at the expense of the long term. And that's fascinating to me. That's fascinating. And that's going to be that's a big question mark. We just don't know, what's going to happen. But that's interesting because, guests going to the parks and having these experience, maybe not so great experience, stuff like that. What does that mean for someone? Look at John Campea. We're fans of John Campea, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you watch Campea, his Disneyland trip was infamous this past summer. He
oh god, we did a whole show about it. I mean,
we did a whole show about it. And
it was
epic rants about how he's never going back. And I think he's maybe an extreme case. I don't, but I think that, hey, stuff like that does happen. Yeah. And when, you go to the parks and, the Genie Plus stuff is going on, and when you're in standby and you're waiting, 10 times longer because they're letting more of those Genie Plus people in, it does ruin the experience for some, and it's possible they're losing customers. Now, the issue with a lot of this stuff, like the paid fast pass and things like that, is that there's really no alternative, because all the parks now offer that stuff. So it's not like you can even say, well, I'll go to this park because they have it too. But
that is true. No, and I completely agree with that. I do agree that this is kind of the route that they were going, but at a $15 price, it might be a little bit too accessible. To really kind of leverage the benefits of the service, just simply because too many people are on it, right? They probably need to increase this price if they are going to stay with this program, maybe even twice or three times. I mean, to really make it so that the people who are getting it actually getting a good value, and it doesn't impact the standby nearly as much.
And I'm going to see that for myself in June, because especially with the Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios, because I feel like those are the two parks that people would use Genie Plus the most. And since we're doing 3 days per park out of those two, I'm actually going to test myself by doing a day by using Genie Plus, and then a day to just use the standby lines, regardless of what the wait time really is, because I've been getting a lot of mixed reviews on it where people are saying, oh, it's beneficial to use Genie Plus. But then there are people that are saying that Disney is kind of quote unquote fibbing when you go into the standby line, where it's an astronomical wait time, but then it's really not by the time they get through, and they actually time themselves. So I'd like to actually see that for myself, of what's really accurate as opposed to what's deceiving.
Well, and here's the thing too. Disney's dealing with a potential, I don't think it's fully class action yet, but a potential class action lawsuit brought on by Magic Key holders in regards to the blockout date.
I mean, it's filed.
Yeah, it's been filed.
No, it's filed. Yeah. Oh. When I was reading that from the actual documents, those are public documents because they have been filed with the court. So it is filed. It's just, will a judge actually take it up? Will it throw it out? That is in question, but that lawsuit is still pending. Okay,
so they already have that, pending. With because of the wording and all that, the misleading. A lot of key holders are saying it's very misleading. I wonder what's going to happen when it comes to the wait times. Because if Disney is actually inflating the wait times to kind of corral people into their paid service, look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not. Believe it or not, I'm not a lawyer. But I would think, from a layman's perspective at least, there might be something there with that.
And I will agree with you. That's why that language is actually there in the app. It says wait time shouldn't be used as a reason for, for buying into the service or something to that effect. And it's like, okay, so they know that this is potentially exploitative, right? And it goes beyond even just wait times. We saw, I was trying to find the Twitter post. I couldn't find it, but somebody actually posted the fact that, Radiator Springs Racers, right? It is the #1 attraction DCA. It is the rise of that park, right? And it full demand, and even Disney kind of values it as such, because you have to pay an individual lightning lane just to get on it when you're at DCA. And somebody actually posted on a Saturday, mind you, while the park was packed, that they were only loading a portion of the cars that were available. Now, I have never seen that ever. I have never seen not all of those lanes actually be full of cars for guests to actually ride. And it was either one down or two down, but it's like, Okay, that right there is exactly what I was talking about when
Yeah.
it came to the efficiency problems that we had projected in earlier shows. I said, well, the incentive now is to not be as efficient as possible. The incentive now is to short that efficiency. Go ahead, George.
No, I was just going to say, yeah. So now, if that was the case as to why these numbers are with the quarterly earnings, that is kind of Disney playing, on that fine line of being kind of, and I hate to use this term, a little bit two-faced, because you're then utilizing that system rather than to help guests, but to just squeeze every dollar out of them just so we could say, oh, we can go high and above for this quarter. Yeah, see, if that's the case there, then yeah, I definitely agree with you where Disney has to watch in the long term, not just what is going on right in front of them.
I know we have a hard out. I just want to get 2 points and
Sure.
I'll shut up for the rest of the show. I know I've been talking a lot, but I'm extremely passionate about this stuff.
Good.
2 things. One is us as Disney fans, yes, obviously, we're a very loud vocal minority, right? As far as sway goes, we don't have much of it. But I will say this, we are also one of the biggest advocates to actually visit and go to these parks, right? We evangelize to our friends, we evangelize to our family to actually, go to these parks and experience them. And when goodwill is lost in so many ways, well, then maybe our advocacy to actually go to these parks is dimmed a little bit. So we do have effects these ways. I can just tell you right now, I have a friend who has never gone to Disneyland ever, and she's going for her first trip very, very soon. And I got to be honest, I really don't know what to tell her because I kind of know all of this stuff in advance. And I don't know how to tell her, you might want to set aside $40 per day just to have this Genie Plus service, because without it, you're just not going to have maybe the best trip possible. And one last anecdote, there's a YouTuber, I forget his name, but he's like a cruiser, right? He's from Canada. All he does is cruise. He's going on a cruise every single week. That's his whole channel. That's his whole shtick, right? And he was talking about how he was planning to go to Walt Disney World like he had in years prior, right? Like, he really does love Disney. And he actually canceled his cruise. I'm sorry, his visit to Walt Disney World.
Wow.
Because of all these different practices. Even he had noticed, that's the international tours, by the way, which during the quarterly earnings report, they said that was made up 20% of annual visitation. And that was a big part of who was missing, post Pandy. And this person who was going to go to Walt Disney World is not from Canada because of what we're seeing right now. So Disney, if you're watching this, you can have your foot on the pedal for so long, but you can't outlast physics, right? A wheel, like my Indy 500 anecdote earlier, a wheel is gonna burst eventually, right? It's just you're gonna have a blowout, no matter how strong that tire is. And in the same case, no brand is indestructible, no matter how much you perceive it to be. So that's my piece.
And we saw that in the very beginning of the Pandy, because a lot of people thought it's Disney, it can't be touched. We'll have it forever. Well,
no.
1 year later with Walt Disney World and almost 2 years with Disneyland, it's like
No company is invincible. And that was my big concern with the lockdowns, because a lot of the fans were saying, "Oh, Disney can afford it. It can be closed down indefinitely forever or whatever, and I was like, "No, it can't. Like the company cannot survive that."
And especially after 70 billion of stock that went into Fox shortly before.
I know. And that was thanks to Daddy Iger, and that was right before the Pandy. Right before the Pandy hit. This was a fantastic conversation. And Dre, I just want to say, you never have to apologize for your passion, brother. I absolutely love your passion. And I really want to have, because I know we have a hard out, I really want to have you guys on again soon, because we can even do a part 2 on this if you guys want, because there's so much to sink in.
It's appropriate. Yeah.
We'll do a part 2. But we're going to close it out, and I'll start with you, Mr. Freshly Squeezed. Where can everybody at home find you on social media?
Best place to find me on Twitter is @Vashka. That's right down there, just like it's spelled. And best place to see me is at OrangeCo55, the channel you're watching right now, at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh right from the grove. So that's where you can find me.
And Mr. Family Man, where can they find you on social media, sir?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23, which is also my Instagram, on Twitter at Disney George, and of course on your channel as well, Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner. And really quick, I have to say directly to Disney, if you're watching, us three, along with many other people, are very passionate about the company, of the product. So even though we may come across very harsh, it's just because we want you to do well, we want you to succeed, and we want you to do it the right way. So I just have to put that out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. 100%. That was well said. That was well said, George. I mean, you're going to be harder on your family, right? Like your kid or your spouse, right? You're gonna be tougher on them because you care.
Well, and as you've seen how my son was directly to me right before we ended with Boba Fett.
Man, that was tough. Oh my goodness gracious!
Got you. That was fantastic. But yes, me and Dre both echo your sentiments. We do this because we care so much, because we are so passionate, and we do love the company so much, and we just want better. And there was a lot of good news in this quarter report, absolutely. But there were some caution signals, sort of, that they should keep an eye on, because down the road, long term, it could be an issue. But thank you all so much for watching this episode of the Orange Nerd Show. Like, subscribe, comment down below with all your opinions on the finale to Book of Boba, the Disney quarterly earnings, Genie Plus, Lightning Lane, all that good stuff. Would love to hear from you. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.